Emma Carter settled into her first-class seat with a quiet smile. The soft leather chair felt comfortable after her long journey to the spaceport. She placed her simple brown bag under the seat in front of her and pulled out a worn paperback book. The cover was old and faded, but she loved reading the same stories again and again. Around her, other first-class passengers were busy showing off their expensive clothes and jewelry. They talked loudly about their important business deals and fancy parties. Emma just wanted to read her book and enjoy the peaceful flight to Kepler Station. She was wearing her favorite blue sweater and comfortable jeans. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore no makeup. To anyone looking, she seemed like an ordinary woman who somehow ended up in the wrong section of the plane. The flight attendant, Jessica, walked down the aisle checking tickets. She was tall and beautiful, with perfect hair and bright red lipstick. Her uniform was spotless, and she moved with the confidence of someone who thought she was very important. When Jessica reached Emma's row, she stopped. She looked at Emma from head to toe, taking in the simple clothes and old book. Her smile became cold and fake. "Excuse me, miss," Jessica said in a sweet voice that didn't match her harsh eyes. "I need to see your boarding pass again." Emma looked up from her book, surprised. "Of course." She reached into her bag and pulled out the pass, handing it over with a friendly smile. Jessica examined the pass carefully, turning it over several times. She frowned and shook her head. "I'm sorry, but there seems to be some kind of mistake here." "What kind of mistake?" Emma asked gently. "Well," Jessica said loudly, making sure other passengers could hear, "this says you have a first-class seat, but that's clearly impossible." The businessman sitting across the aisle, Richard Blackwood, looked over with interest. He was a large man with gray hair and an expensive suit. His gold watch caught the light as he adjusted his tie. "Is there a problem?" Richard asked, his voice full of authority. Jessica turned to him gratefully. "Just a small issue with someone who doesn't belong in first class." Emma felt her cheeks grow warm, but she kept her voice calm. "I bought this ticket 3 weeks ago. Everything is in order." "Ma'am," Jessica said, her voice getting sharper. "People like you don't just buy first-class tickets. These seats cost more than most people make in a month." Richard nodded in agreement. "I saw her acting strange earlier." He lied smoothly. She was looking around like she'd never seen the inside of an airport before. Other passengers started to whisper and stare. Emma could feel their eyes on her, judging her simple clothes and quiet manner. She took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "I assure you my ticket is real," Emma said softly. "Perhaps you could check with your computer system?" Jessica rolled her eyes. "Listen, honey, I've been doing this job for 10 years. I know a fake ticket when I see one. The question is, how did you get it? Did you steal it? Print a fake one at home?" Emma's heart began to beat faster, but she kept her voice steady. "I would never do such a thing. Please just check your system." "She's probably one of those people who sneak onto flights," said a woman with too much perfume sitting nearby. "I've heard about them on the news." "Absolutely disgraceful," added another passenger. "Security these days is terrible." Jessica smiled triumphantly. She had an audience now and she was enjoying the show. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to gather your things and move to economy class where you belong." "But my ticket clearly shows," Emma began. "Your fake ticket," Jessica interrupted rudely. "And if you don't move right now, I'll have to call security and have you arrested for fraud." Emma looked around at the faces staring at her. Some looked angry, others seemed, to enjoy the drama. No one offered to help or defend her. She realized that fighting would only make things worse. The head flight attendant, Marcus, appeared at Jessica's side. He was a thin man with a sharp nose and an attitude that made him seem very important in his own mind. "What's the situation? Here?" he asked in a bored voice. "This woman has a fake first-class ticket," Jessica explained. "She's refusing to move to economy." Marcus barely glanced at Emma's boarding pass. He was already sure that Jessica was right. After all, what would someone dressed like that be doing in first class? "Ma'am, you need to move to the back of the plane immediately," he said firmly. If you cooperate now, we won't have to involve the authorities. Emma closed her book slowly and put it back in her bag. She could fight this, could demand they check their computer system properly, could make a scene. But that wasn't her way. She had learned long ago that sometimes the best response to cruelty was dignity. Very well, she said quietly, standing up. I'll move. The passengers around her seemed pleased with themselves. Richard Blackwood actually clapped softly. Good for you, standing up to fraud, he told Jessica loudly. As Emma gathered her few belongings, she pulled out her phone and made a quick call. The conversation was brief, just a few quiet words that no one else could hear clearly. Then she hung up and walked calmly toward the economy section. Jessica and Marcus watched her go. With satisfaction, they had done their job, protected the airline from fraud, and impressed the first-class passengers with their vigilance. But if they had been paying attention, they might have noticed that Emma didn't seem upset or embarrassed as she walked away. Instead, there was something in her eyes, not anger, but a quiet certainty that justice would come in its own time. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Emma settled into her cramped economy seat. She opened her book again and began to read, completely calm. Around her, the economy passengers were kind and normal, sharing snacks and helping each other with their bags. She smiled to herself, thinking that perhaps she was in better company, after all. Flight 847 landed smoothly at Kepler Station 3 hours later. Emma Carter walked off the plane quietly, carrying her simple brown bag. She didn't complain to anyone or make a fuss. She just smiled politely at the gate agent and disappeared into the crowd of travelers. Jessica and Marcus were feeling very proud of themselves. They had caught a fraud and protected their airline's reputation. As they prepared the plane for its next flight, they joked about the fake passenger they had caught. Did you see how she tried to act innocent? Jessica laughed, touching up her lipstick in the small mirror. Some people have no shame. Good thing we spotted her right away, Marcus agreed, checking his watch. That's why they pay us the big money, to keep the riffraff out. Richard Blackwood was also feeling pleased. He had helped expose a criminal and shown everyone what a sharp businessman he was. As he collected his expensive luggage, he told other passengers about how he had immediately known something was wrong with that woman. But while they celebrated, something else was happening. At Kepler Station's security office, Chief Mike Rodriguez was reviewing the daily reports. He was a careful man who took his job seriously. Every flight that landed at his station was monitored, and today something had caught his attention. One of his officers, Lisa, knocked on his door. Chief, you need to see this. She handed him a tablet showing security footage from Flight 847. We got a complaint from a passenger about discrimination. She says the crew treated her badly because of how she looked. Chief Rodriguez watched the footage carefully. He saw Emma sitting peacefully in first class, reading her book. He saw Jessica approach her with that fake smile. He heard every word of the conversation, saw how the other passengers joined in to humiliate her, and watched Emma's dignified response. This is bad, he said quietly. Very bad. What's the passenger's name? Lisa checked her notes. Emma Carter. She filed a formal complaint an hour ago. Very polite about it, but she wants it on record. Chief Rodriguez nodded. Send a full report to Starwing Airlines headquarters immediately. Include all the video footage and witness statements. This kind of discrimination is illegal, and they need to know about it. Meanwhile, at Starwing Airlines headquarters on Earth, CEO Patricia Wells was having a normal Tuesday morning. She was reviewing quarterly reports when her assistant rushed into her office. Ma'am, we have a priority message from Kepler Station Security. It's marked urgent. Patricia frowned. Urgent messages usually meant trouble. She opened the file and began reading. Her coffee cup froze halfway to her lips as she read the complaint. When she saw the name Emma Carter, her face went completely white. Oh no, she whispered. Oh, no. She immediately called her head of security. Drop everything and pull the complete file on Emma Carter. I need to know everything about what happened on Flight 847. While she waited, Patricia tried to stay calm, but her hands were shaking. She had been CEO of Starwing Airlines for 5 years, and she knew exactly who Emma Carter was married to. The problem was most of her employees didn't. Emma Carter was the wife of David Carter, the billionaire owner of Carter Galactic Enterprises. David owned 73% of Starwing Airlines, making him the company's majority shareholder. He was also known for 2 things: his fierce protection of his wife and his zero tolerance for discrimination. Patricia's phone rang. It was her security chief with a complete report. "It's worse than we thought," he said grimly. "The footage shows clear discrimination. The flight attendants never even checked their computer system properly. They just assumed she didn't belong in first class because of her appearance." Patricia watched the security footage on her computer screen. She saw Jessica's cruel behavior, Marcus's arrogant dismissal, and Richard Blackwood's false accusations. Worst of all, she saw Emma's quiet dignity as she was publicly humiliated. "Get me the employment files for Jessica Martinez and Marcus Thompson. Immediately," she ordered. "And find out who Richard Blackwood is and what companies he represents." As her staff scrambled to gather information, Patricia tried calling the crew members. Jessica didn't answer. She was too busy shopping at Kepler, station's luxury mall, spending her salary on expensive perfume. Marcus was at the station bar, telling anyone who would listen about how he had caught a criminal that day. Richard Blackwood was in his hotel room, making business calls and bragging about his sharp eyes for spotting troublemakers. None of them had any idea that their actions had already set off alarms at the highest levels of the company. Patricia's assistant brought her the files she had requested. Jessica Martinez had been with the company for 10 years, but had several complaints about her attitude toward passengers. Marcus Thompson had been a supervisor for 8 years and had a history of making decisions without proper investigation. Richard Blackwood was even more concerning. He was the CEO of Blackwood Industries, a shipping company that had several contracts with Carter Galactic Enterprises worth millions of dollars. Patricia realized that this wasn't just about discrimination anymore. This was about the reputation of the entire airline and relationships with their most important business partners. She picked up her phone to make the call she was dreading. David Carter's personal number was in her contacts, but she had hoped never to use it for something like this. The phone rang twice before a calm voice answered. "David Carter speaking." "Mr. Carter, this is Patricia Wells from Starwing Airlines. I'm afraid I have some very disturbing news about your wife." There was a long pause. When David spoke again, his voice was ice cold. "Tell me everything." Patricia took a deep breath and began to explain what had happened. As she spoke, she could hear the temperature in David's voice dropping with each word. By the time she finished, the silence on the other end was terrifying. "I want immediate action," David said finally. "Full investigation, complete accountability, and public consequences. No exceptions." "Yes, sir. We're already—" "And Patricia?" David interrupted. "Find those crew members now." The line went dead. Patricia stared at her phone, knowing that by tomorrow nothing would ever be the same for the people who had humiliated Emma Carter. At Kepler Station, Jessica, Marcus, and Richard were still celebrating their victory, completely unaware that their world was about to change forever. David Carter was in the middle of an important board meeting when his phone buzzed. He normally never answered calls during meetings, but when he saw his wife's name on the screen, he immediately stepped outside. "Hello, sweetheart," he said warmly. "How was your flight?" Emma's voice was calm as always, but David could hear something underneath. "The flight was interesting. I had a small problem with the crew, but it's handled now." David knew his wife well. Emma never complained, even when she should. If she was calling it a small problem, it was probably much worse. "What happened?" he asked, his voice becoming serious. Emma told him the story simply, without anger or drama. She explained how the flight attendants had accused her of fraud, how other passengers had joined in, and how she had been forced to move to economy class. By the time she finished, David's jaw was tight with fury, but his voice remained calm. "Are you okay, love?" "I'm fine," Emma said. "I just thought you should know. I filed a complaint with station security. Good, David said quietly. I'll handle the rest. Enjoy your conference. After hanging up, David stood in the hallway for a moment, his hands clenched into fists. Then he walked back into the boardroom. Gentlemen, this meeting is over, he announced. Something urgent has come up. Within minutes, David was on the phone with Patricia Wells, listening to her nervous explanation of what had happened. When she finished, the silence stretched for long seconds. Mr. Carter? Patricia asked hesitantly. I want those crew members found immediately, David said, his voice like ice. And I want a full background check on every passenger who participated in humiliating my wife. Yes, sir. We're already tracking them down. At Kepler Station, Starwing security officers were searching for Jessica and Marcus. They found Jessica at the luxury shopping center, trying on expensive jewelry she couldn't afford. Jessica Martinez? The officer asked. Yes, that's me, Jessica said proudly, assuming she was being recognized for her good work. You need to come with us for questioning about an incident on Flight 847. Jessica laughed. Oh, you mean the woman with the fake ticket? Don't worry. We handled that situation perfectly. She won't be bothering first-class passengers again. The officer's expression didn't change. Ma'am, you need to come with us now. Marcus was found at the station bar, halfway through his third drink and telling his story to anyone who would listen. And then I told her, Lady, you don't belong in first class, he was saying loudly. You should have seen her face. She knew. She was caught. Marcus Thompson, the security officer interrupted. That's me, Marcus said, swaying slightly. Are you here about the fraud case? Because I can tell you exactly how we caught her. Sir, you need to come with us immediately. Richard Blackwood was in his hotel room when security knocked on his door. He opened it with a big smile, expecting room service. Mr. Blackwood, Kepler Station Security. We need to ask you some questions about Flight 847. Of course, Richard said happily. I'm glad someone is taking this seriously. I helped expose a criminal today. At the security office, all three were brought into separate rooms. Chief Rodriguez had prepared carefully for these interviews. He had all the footage, all the evidence, and most importantly, he now knew exactly who Emma Carter was. Jessica was questioned first. She sat confidently in her chair, still believing she was a hero. Tell me about the incident with Emma Carter, Chief Rodriguez said. Oh, that was easy, Jessica said proudly. She had a fake first-class ticket, probably stole it or printed it at home. I spotted her right away. She clearly didn't belong there. How did you determine the ticket was fake? Just look at her, Jessica laughed. Cheap clothes, no jewelry, reading an old book. People like that don't fly first class. Chief Rodriguez made notes. Did you check your computer system to verify? The ticket? Jessica waved her hand dismissively. I didn't need to, it was obvious. In the next room, Marcus was telling the same story. He was proud of how quickly he had supported Jessica's decision. I've been in this business for 8 years, he bragged. I can spot a fake passenger from across the plane. She didn't fight much, which proves she knew she was guilty. Richard Blackwood was the most talkative of all. He described in detail how he had immediately sensed something wrong with Emma. I have a gift for reading people, he explained. It's made me very successful in business. I could tell she was up to no good the moment I saw her. After the interviews, Chief Rodriguez called Patricia Wells. I have them all in custody, he reported. They're completely unaware of what they've done. In fact, they're proud of it. Patricia felt sick. Are you sure they don't know who Emma Carter is? Positive. They keep bragging about catching a criminal. Should I tell them? Patricia thought for a moment. Not yet. We're sending a representative to handle this personally. Keep them there. 6 hours later, a Starwing corporate jet landed at Kepler Station. Patricia Wells herself stepped off the plane, followed by the company's head of legal affairs and their chief security officer. At the security office, Patricia asked to speak with each person individually. Jessica was brought in first. Ms. Martinez, I'm Patricia Wells, CEO of Starwing Airlines. Jessica's eyes went wide. The CEO had come personally. She must have done something really important. Ma'am, I'm so honored to meet you. I hope you heard about how well I handled the fraud situation today. Patricia's expression was stone cold. Tell me, Ms. Martinez, do you know who Emma Carter is? Some woman trying to steal a first-class seat, Jessica said confidently. Patricia placed a tablet on the table and turned it toward Jessica. On the screen was a photo of Emma Carter standing next to David Carter at a charity event. Emma Carter is the wife of David Carter, who owns 73% of this airline, Patricia said quietly. You just humiliated the wife of our majority shareholder. Jessica's face went completely white. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. That's impossible, she whispered. The security footage shows everything, Patricia continued. Your discrimination, your refusal to check the computer system, your public humiliation of Mrs. Carter. Jessica began to shake. But she looked so what? So normal? So humble? Patricia's voice was ice cold. Mrs. Carter is one of the kindest, most generous women I've ever met. And you treated her like a criminal because of her clothes. When Marcus was shown the same photo, he actually fell backward in his chair. Oh God, he whispered. Oh God, what have I done? Richard Blackwood's reaction was the worst. When he realized who Emma Carter was, and that his own company had contracts worth millions with David Carter's business empire, he began to panic. This is a mistake, he shouted. I was just trying to help. I didn't know. But Patricia Wells had heard enough. The damage was done, and now there would be consequences. Mr. Carter is flying here personally, she told each of them. He wants to meet the people who humiliated his wife. For the first time, all three began to understand the true size of their mistake. They had not just been cruel to an innocent woman. They had declared war on one of the most powerful men in the galaxy, and he was coming. David Carter's private ship arrived at Kepler Station 18 hours after Emma's phone call. It was a sleek, powerful vessel that had traveled at maximum speed across 3 star systems. The docking bay crew watched nervously as the ship settled into its berth. Everyone at the station now knew who was coming and why. David stepped off his ship wearing a simple black suit. He was a tall man with kind eyes that could turn ice cold when he was angry. Today, those eyes were colder than space itself. His first stop was the hotel where Emma was staying. He found her in the conference room, giving a presentation about clean water projects to a group of charity workers. She looked up and smiled when she saw him slip quietly into the back of the room. After her presentation ended, Emma walked over to her husband. You didn't have to come all this way, she said softly. Yes, I did, David replied, wrapping his arms around her. Are you really okay? Emma nodded. I'm fine, but I think some people are about to learn a very hard lesson. They hurt you, David said simply. That's not acceptable. At the security office, Jessica, Marcus, and Richard had spent the night in holding cells. They hadn't slept much. The reality of their situation was finally sinking in. Jessica kept replaying the moment she had seen Emma's photo. How could she have been so wrong? How could someone so rich and powerful dress so simply and act so kindly? Marcus was thinking about his 8-year career with Starwing Airlines. He had always been proud of his job, but now he realized he had thrown it all away because he couldn't see past a woman's clothes. Richard was in the worst position of all. His company, Blackwood Industries, had contracts worth $15 million with Carter Galactic Enterprises. Those contracts employed half his workforce. If David Carter canceled them, his business would collapse. At 10 o'clock in the morning, they were brought to a conference room where Patricia Wells was waiting. She looked tired and stressed. Mr. Carter will be here in a few minutes, she announced. Before he arrives, I want to make something very clear. This company has zero tolerance for discrimination. What you did yesterday was not just wrong, it was illegal. The door opened and David Carter walked in. He was not a large man, but his presence filled the room. He looked at each of them carefully, his expression unreadable. My wife, he said quietly, is the kindest person I have ever met. She gives millions to charity every year, but she does it anonymously because she doesn't want attention. She dresses simply because she doesn't care about expensive things. She treats everyone with respect, from billionaires to janitors. He paused, letting his words sink in. Yesterday, you humiliated her in front of a plane full of people. You accused her of being a criminal. You made her sit in a cramped seat for 3 hours after she had done nothing wrong. You did this because you judged her by her appearance. Jessica tried to speak. Mr. Carter, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't care to know, David interrupted. You saw someone who didn't look rich enough for your standards and you decided she didn't deserve to be treated with dignity. He turned to Marcus. And you, as a supervisor, supported this discrimination without even checking your computer system. You were too lazy to do your job properly. Marcus hung his head in shame. David looked at Richard last. And you, Mr. Blackwood, saw an opportunity to look important by joining in the attack on an innocent woman. You lied about seeing her acting suspicious to make yourself look good. Richard was sweating now. Mr. Carter, please, I have employees who depend on me. I made a terrible mistake. Yes, you did, David agreed. And mistakes have consequences. David walked to the window and looked out at the busy station. I've been thinking about what justice looks like in this situation. My wife asked me not to be too harsh because that's the kind of person she is, but I can't let this go unpunished. He turned back to face them. Ms. Martinez, you are fired immediately. Your flight attendant certification will be revoked, and I will personally ensure that no major airline in human space will hire you. Jessica began to cry. Her career was over. Mr. Thompson, you are also fired. Your supervisor credentials are revoked. You will never work for Starwing Airlines or any of our partner companies again. Marcus nodded silently. He had expected this. Mr. Blackwood, David continued, your company's contracts with Carter Galactic Enterprises are canceled immediately. All $15 million in business gone. Richard stood up desperately. Please, Mr. Carter, I have 200 employees. They'll lose their jobs. You should have thought about that before you decided to humiliate my wife, David replied coldly. But then David's expression softened slightly. However, I am not completely without mercy. Your employees don't deserve to suffer for your stupidity. I will give them all jobs with other companies in my network, at the same pay and benefits. But you personally will be blacklisted from any business dealings with any company I own or influence. Richard collapsed back into his chair. His business was destroyed, but at least his employees would be okay. Now, David said, I want to make sure this never happens again. He pressed a button on his phone and the conference room's wall screen came to life. It showed a news reporter standing outside the station. We're here live at Kepler Station where billionaire David Carter is expected to hold a press conference about discrimination on Starwing Airlines. David looked at the 3 people who had humiliated his wife. The whole galaxy is going to hear about what you did. Your names, your faces, your actions, everything will be public. Future employers will know exactly what kind of people you are. An hour later, David stood at a podium in the station's main conference room. Emma stood beside him, calm and dignified as always. Behind them was a screen showing the security footage from Flight 847. Ladies and gentlemen, David began, yesterday, my wife was subjected to discrimination and humiliation aboard a Starwing Airlines flight, not because she had done anything wrong, but because some people decided she didn't look rich enough to deserve respect. The footage played, showing Jessica's cruel behavior, Marcus's lazy indifference, and Richard's false accusations. It showed Emma's quiet dignity as she was publicly humiliated. This kind of behavior is unacceptable anywhere in civilized space, David continued. Starting today, Starwing Airlines will implement the strongest anti-discrimination policies in the industry. Every employee will be trained, every incident will be investigated, and every person who treats passengers with disrespect will face immediate consequences. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Carter, what message do you want to send to other airlines? David looked directly into the camera. Treat every passenger with dignity and respect, regardless of how they look or what they wear. You never know who you're talking to, but more importantly, every person deserves to be treated with basic human decency. Emma stepped forward to the microphone. I want to say that while what happened was hurtful, I hope it leads to positive change. No one should ever be judged by their appearance, or treated as less than human. The press conference was broadcast across human space and to allied species. Within hours, the story was everywhere. The three people who had humiliated Emma Carter became symbols of everything wrong with discrimination and prejudice. Jessica found herself unable to get any job in the service industry. Marcus was blacklisted from every major airline. Richard's business collapsed completely. Though true to his word, David Carter found jobs for all his employees. But the real consequence was bigger than any of them. The story sparked conversations about respect, dignity, and the danger of judging people by their appearance. Emma Carter became a symbol of grace under pressure, while her husband showed that protecting those we love sometimes requires standing up to bullies. The galaxy learned an important lesson. Treat everyone with kindness because you never know who they might be. But more importantly, treat everyone with kindness because it's the right thing to do. 6 months after the incident on Flight 847, the galaxy was still talking about Emma Carter. The story had spread far beyond human space, reaching alien worlds and distant colonies. It had become more than just news. It had become a legend about human dignity and justice. At Starwing Airlines headquarters, Patricia Wells was reviewing the quarterly reports with satisfaction. The company had completely changed its training programs and policies. Every employee now went through intensive courses about treating all passengers with respect. The airline's reputation had actually improved after the incident, as people saw how seriously they took discrimination. "Ma'am," her assistant said, entering the office, "we have the customer satisfaction numbers for this quarter." Patricia smiled as she read the report. Starwing Airlines now had the highest customer satisfaction rating in the industry. Passengers felt safer and more respected flying with them. The company had turned a disaster into an opportunity to become better. Meanwhile, on a small research station near the edge of human space, Emma Carter was visiting a medical clinic she had helped fund. She wore her usual simple clothes, a comfortable blue dress and practical shoes. The doctors and nurses treated her like family, not because she was rich, but because she genuinely cared about their work. "Mrs. Carter," said Dr. Helen Park, the clinic's director, "the new equipment you donated has already saved 12 lives this month." Emma smiled warmly. "That's wonderful news. How are the children doing?" As they walked through the clinic, Emma stopped to talk with patients and their families. She remembered names, asked about their lives, and listened carefully to their stories. To her, every person mattered, whether they were billionaire CEOs or farmers from distant planets. The story of Flight 847 had changed how people thought about judging others. Schools across human space now taught the Emma Carter lesson, that you should never assume anything about someone based on how they look. On the mining planet of Titan 7th, a young girl named Lucy was being bullied at school because her family was poor and she wore old clothes. When her teacher heard about it, she gathered the class together. "Have you heard the story of Emma Carter?" the teacher asked. The children shook their heads, so she told them about the kind woman who was treated badly on a spaceship because people thought she wasn't important enough for first class. "But she was married to one of the richest men in the galaxy?" Lucy asked, confused. "That's right," the teacher said. "But even if she wasn't, she still deserved to be treated with respect. Every person has value, no matter what they wear or how much money they have." The bullying stopped that day. Lucy's classmates realized that being mean to someone because of their clothes was exactly the same mistake the flight attendants had made. The story had also reached alien species throughout the galaxy. On the water world of Aquarius Prime, the dolphin-like cetaceans discussed the incident in their deep-sea councils. "These humans," clicked Elder Sonicwave, "they show both great cruelty and great justice. The female Emma showed dignity when treated badly. The male David showed protection without excessive revenge. This is wisdom." The crystalline beings of the Prism Nebula found the story fascinating from a different angle. Their society had no concept of appearance-based discrimination, since they all looked identical. "Human emotions are complex," resonated Crystal Singer Aurora. "They can hate based on visual differences, but they can also love and protect fiercely." This David human's response was measured, strong enough to teach, but not so harsh as to destroy, needlessly. But perhaps the most important changes were happening in the lives of ordinary people. Jessica Martinez was working as a clerk in a small store on a frontier planet. The pay was terrible and she was barely surviving. Every day she thought about the mistake that had destroyed her career. She had learned to treat every customer with genuine respect, no matter how they looked. One day, an elderly man in torn clothes came into her store. The old Jessica would have watched him suspiciously, assuming he might steal something. But she had learned her lesson the hard way. "Good morning, sir," she said politely. "How can I help you today?" The man smiled at her kindness. "Just looking for some supplies for my ship." As they talked, Jessica learned that he was a retired starship captain who had chosen to live simply. He appreciated her respectful treatment and became a regular customer. Jessica realized that she was finally becoming the person she should have been all along. Marcus Thompson had found work as a baggage handler at a small spaceport. It was humble work, far from his old supervisor position, but it had taught him valuable lessons. He watched how the current flight attendants treated passengers and silently cheered when he saw kindness and respect. One afternoon, he saw a young flight attendant being rude to an elderly passenger. Marcus quietly approached her during her break. "Can I give you some advice?" he asked gently. "I used to be a supervisor for Starwing Airlines. I lost my job because I forgot that every passenger deserves respect. Don't make the same mistake." "I did." The young woman listened carefully as Marcus told her about Emma Carter. She thanked him and returned to work with a new understanding of her responsibilities. Richard Blackwood had lost everything: his company, his reputation, his wealth. But in losing everything material, he had found something more valuable: humility. He now worked as a counselor helping other business owners who had made serious mistakes. "Pride," he would tell them. "Pride is what destroyed me. I thought I was better than a woman in simple clothes. I thought I could judge her worth by looking at her. That arrogance cost me everything I had built." His story helped other people avoid making similar mistakes. In losing his business, Richard had found his purpose. The most beautiful part of the story's legacy was happening in classrooms, workplaces, and homes across the galaxy. Parents told their children about Emma Carter when they were tempted to judge others. Teachers used her example when discussing kindness and respect. Managers trained their employees to treat every customer with dignity. Emma herself remained humble about her role in all of this. When reporters asked for interviews, she usually declined, preferring to let her actions speak for themselves. She continued her charity work, traveled simply, and treated everyone she met with the same gentle respect she had always shown. David Carter was proud of how his wife had handled everything. The incident had revealed her true character to the galaxy, not her wealth or connections, but her grace under pressure and her belief in treating everyone with dignity. The story of Flight 847 became a turning point in how humanity thought about respect and discrimination. It showed that humans could be both cruel and just, both petty and noble. But most importantly, it demonstrated that even in a galaxy full of advanced technology and alien civilizations, the simplest human values, kindness, dignity, and respect, were still the most powerful forces for good. Emma Carter never set out to change the galaxy. She just wanted to be treated with basic human decency. But sometimes that's exactly what the universe needs. One person standing up for what's right, with quiet dignity and unshakable grace. The galaxy learned that day that humans, at their best, don't judge others by their appearance or wealth. They judge them by their character. And in Emma Carter, they saw the very best of what humanity could be.